Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Discussing a Murderer. This is Jeff Jones. With me today is the full panel. We're feeling fully powered up, ready to go. We're absolutely there, Big Jeff. Welcome back to the show. Nice to see you, buddy.
Hey, I believe a whole week has elapsed between this episode and the last one. Um, I'm not sure how many comments we've been getting from the Guilters about how much they enjoyed last week's episode. I thought it was a great episode, but I liked it very much, and I think they're going to like today even less. And isn't that a happy note? So give us a thumbs up in the chat if you think the Guilters are going to hate it. So,
It's a great way to start any episode, Big Jeff, by taunting the Guilters. Those comments, Big Jeff. I like the energy you bring. Kelly, welcome back. Nice to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. It's good to be back, and I'm definitely ready to get hopefully further than a whole 2 minutes today. But I won't hold my breath because I'll be dead.
Yeah, no promises on that one, Kel, for sure. And Dr. Silkman, welcome back. Nice to see you, and good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here, and hi everyone on the panel and everyone in chat. And I raise up my right hand and I say, I will not mention item FL in today's podcast. Anyone believe me?
No.
That would be a big negative, Doc. Big negative.
That's
Procedurally barred at this point.
I am procedurally barred. Correct. Now, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Silkman. We're looking forward to it too. Jack, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Welcome everyone in the live chat, panel members. Ready to talk about, procedurally barred item FL, but regardless, I'm sure it's going to come up, so I'm ready to go.
Even though I can't date the blood, but I have enough evidence to vacate conviction to see if, because they just can't fathom that he's innocent.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I think they are two credible attorneys. They just, I think, haven't thought through a lot of this stuff. It's kind of fascinating because in a way it's not a case of new evidence. I mean, we had new evidence. It's not going to turn on that. It's going to turn on experts that should have been called that existed at the time.
I think after a while, they really realize this is the right thing to do. And I think it'll happen fairly quickly.
That'll be huge because, we've got a lot of other forensic evidence that we can dispute, but since the bullet supposedly caused the death, if we can dismantle that theory with this testing, then I think that the conviction has to be vacated.
Yeah, I would think these results could cast serious doubt on everything else.
What's interesting about that, she seems to imply there that they met with Gahn and Fallon and Gahn for an hour and a half. I'm sure they needed a full hazmat level decontamination after that. But that aside, the way that they were just talking, which was, they seem to agree that if they could dispute the bullet item FL, because that helps dismantle the whole aspect that it was was shot. That Teresa was shot in the head, and that was the vehicle of her death. It sounds to me, and correct, I'd like to hear what the panel has to say, that she's intimating that she used that argument with Fallon and Gahn, and that they, at least to some level, bought into that argument to release item FL for testing. Is that the way that you guys interpret that too?
I'll tell you right now, Tom Fallon would have gone through all the legal ramifications of the retesting of item FL. And as Kelly alluded eloquently in the last episode, it's a so what moment now. Okay, so you proved item FL didn't struck Teresa in the skull. So what? We never said that it did. So I'll tell you right now, they would have never released item FL if they didn't have a plan B. Just an opinion.
I would have to wholeheartedly agree with that. He would have checked, besides his own knowledge in his brain, because he can rattle this stuff off very quickly. He's like Doc said, he's about as sharp a lawyer on Wisconsin law as I know of. I know there's others, but he is really good, and you have to respect that no matter what he's done. At the same time, I think he would have intimated closely with Westlaw and everything that he could have done in order to have tried to get around it. I believe that.
I can't add much more to that. Big Jeff, the guy's already said everything. I reckon that, again, he would have, in fact, he was so probably went through everything and he trusted what he had gone through. That's why he gave it up. And that's, for me, the reason why you see him give over things that he's confident in terms of the stuff she asked for and they didn't hand over, for example, the RAV. So he went through all thoroughly the whole item FL and probably dissected it and then was confident that, okay, you're not going to get much from this, go for it, versus, for example, they in a sense, I don't know if the words tricked her, but misled her into believing that she was going to get more later, because they all thought that the Judge Angela was going to actually grant this evidentiary hearing and then she'd have the opportunity to maybe have, an opportunity to test the RAV and do other alternative testing. So I that's all I've got because I really can't add. It's already been said.
You're right, because there's DNA found on the bullet. So if we can refute that it went through her skull, then that means the DNA was planted. There's really no other explanation for it.
Yeah.
Kathleen Zellner is a great lawyer, and I think she's going to do her job, and she's going to get Stephen out.
Kathleen's a tough lady.
She's very tough. You can give her a lot of credit.
Yeah.
But I give Laura Knight Rider and Steve Drizzen a lot of credit too for what they've done. The reason why we weren't at the Seventh Circuit is because we figured that we would spend the day with Brendan. And that's what we did. We listened to some of it, but not all of it. And I think the judges asked good questions, to the state and to Brendan's lawyers. So I'm hoping they're more on Brendan's side than the state side, but
It's a different state, different people, so it's more hopeful than being here in the state of Wisconsin.
if it was in the state of Wisconsin, there would be no chance.
Our best guess is that it will take between 6 months and a year for the Seventh Circuit to rule.
The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is being asked to decide whether Judge Duffin was right or wrong. Either Judge Duffin was right, this conviction should be overturned and that confession should be thrown out, or the district court was wrong. Brendan should stay in prison.
It does not have to be a unanimous decision. There were 3 judges on that panel, and whoever can command 2 votes will win this round. If we win, our next step will be to seek an appeal bond that would enable Brendan to be released while this case continues to drag its way through the courts. If we lose, the first step is to try to get the entire 7th Circuit, all of the judges, to hear the case. If the 7th Circuit decides it does not want to hear the case, there's one more step in the process, and that's asking the United States Supreme Court to review the decisions of the 7th Circuit. Either way, win or lose, Laura and I will keep fighting until we're out of cards to try to get Brendan home and back with his family.
We're dealing with somebody's life here, right? If Brendan Dassey is innocent, I believe he is. My God, the bar is set, and probably Kelly will say a couple of comments on this. The bar is set extremely high. And it's amazing that when an umpire makes a decision, the state can challenge that decision. And I know Jack 61 is very passionate about this. At what stage do you actually accept the umpire's decision? Do you keep on challenging all the time until the decision goes your way? Again, I don't think people are really worried about Brendan per se or his family. They were concerned about how things were going to go down if Brendan was released. It would have looked really bad for the state. Just an opinion.
Agreed. And I bitched about it, I railed about it, and I continue to rail about it. If the 3-panel judge system is not good enough, do away with it. And I don't care which side, again, I don't care which side a decision falls on. If it's not good enough, eliminate it and do the en banc every time. See how far that gets them. It'll jam the courts up so damn bad that they can't function. So the system they've got in place should be accepted. End of story. That's my opinion.
Is it warm down there today?
Yeah, there's the heat advisory. They're supposed to handle Gatorade, but they haven't got it out here yet.
No?
Yeah, they're supposed to. That's one of the rules, especially since the ice machine got ice.
Again?
Yeah, because people throw up their pictures. They're not supposed to do it. The guys tell them not to, but they still do. I keep telling the people that throw up their pictures, they got to stop doing that. Then they always tell me stop complaining.
Yeah. We're doing okay. Some days it's tougher than others, but that's expected.
We're doing okay. It's the waiting game sucks.
But the waiting might be worth its while.
Right. It's been a long 11 years.
It's been a long year or two.
Yeah,
and a
this
half
last year's
or
been
whatever.
probably one of the worst since the first couple.
I think the judges will do the right decision. I really do. I can feel it. If it does go the wrong way, then I think they're all in cahoots. Because if the world knows what went on, these judges should too.
Basically, he said essentially the same thing with Mama Avery and also Pa Avery, how it had a tremendous effect on them. And, Barb and Scott, they look absolutely worn out, especially Barb. Is just a horrible, horrible situation to be in. And she made the comment about, all the judges, the whole world will know. But I think Jack 61 will probably bust another iPad. But when Judge Duffin came down and said, listen, the kid's obviously being coerced. You can't use this testimony. It's rubbish. And then when the Attorney General comes out, Brad Schimmel, and says that Judge Duffin was wrong on the facts and wrong on the law, you're in big trouble. Because, yes, I know you can appeal, but Judge Duffin is not wet behind the ears. He's a senior person. And this was just a massive waste of everyone's time and money. It truly was a shocking thing.
That morning? Like before you went to work or in there sometime? Or
I called Auto Trader.
Called Auto Trader that morning?
I set up the appointment.
Okay. And what did they that somebody would come out with?
She told me she don't know if she got her information already. It might be this Monday or next Monday.
Okay. Who did you call? Do you remember?
Auto Trader.
I mean, the office, or did you call the photographer?
The office.
The office. Okay. Did you tell him it was Steve calling that you got a car to sell or a truck to sell or what?
It's underneath Barbara's name. I'll put it underneath Barbara's name.
Okay. There you go.
Barbara's vehicle.
And Barbara's your sister.
Yeah.
And what's her last name again? John.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Stephen Avery did not just come upon Teresa Halbach by accident. He targeted her. Teresa is lured onto the property. He used a different phone number. He used a different name. This was one of the main parts of the prosecution, that Teresa was lured.
With the luring and the lies and the look at Jeff. He can't take it anymore. I'm with you, buddy.
Well, I mean, this is the fundamental problem. When a senior, and he's meant to be a senior attorney, can absolutely talk bullshit with no facts, come up with a fantasy story. You tell me, is he any better than Brendan Dassey, who had completely made it up from a book? No, he's on the same level. He's got no facts to back anything up, but he's got to come up with a narrative that people are going to follow, because people are scratching their heads. People are still scratching their heads now. Why would Stephen Avery, who was on the verge of becoming a multimillionaire in Wisconsin, go and kill Teresa Halbach and halt his own depositions? It actually doesn't make any sense here, guys.
By Mr. Kratz makes any sense at all. Why not get a burner phone and make a hustle shot? Just to say that you're your sister, and oh, by the way, this was not the first time that I think he used somebody else, because it was not, he wasn't going to receive the proceeds. It was going to be easier to logistics using Barb's name and number, because that's what people were going to call if they wanted to put a bid on the car. I just, what is luring? He called her. I don't see how this was a brilliant plan to lure. And if you have all this time to think about it, right? To the point where you're going to do it, the level of premeditation that we're talking about, calling Monday morning, thinking about it all day, you think you get it in your head, well, maybe this wasn't the best plan.
Mere factor that Stephen left a paper trail going straight to his front door with phone numbers, etc., is, in my opinion, completely outrageous.
And told others that she was coming to take photos of the van. Everyone knew on the yard.
By Stephen Avery to that property.
The state's theory was that Stephen was this sex-obsessed maniac who lured Teresa to his property to kill her after setting an appointment with her, and that he was using deception by calling and using the name B. Yonda. The truth is, she knew where she was going. At 2:27, she told Don Plitzka at Auto Trader magazine that she was on her way to the Averys. she had been to the Avery property 5 times before October 31st. And she had done a hustle shot on October 10th for Stephen. A hustle shot was not an appointment that was scheduled through Auto Trader, but an appointment she set up herself. So Stephen, given Stephen her cell phone number, she was obviously comfortable enough to give him her cell phone number.
You recognize the name Yonda, J-A-N-D-A, right?
That's what I could make out
Okay.
from what he had said. And
And you knew that the Yondas and the Averys are basically the same people, same area, right?
no, I did not.
You didn't.
No.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 19, see if maybe this refreshes your recollection a little bit. So you actually ran this report yourself
Yes.
on, in this particular instance, September 19th of 2005, right?
Yes.
And the very first name listed there is Tom Yonda, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And the address there, would you read that off, please?
12930 Avery Road.
Is that the same address that you have here on Exhibit 17, the photo shoot that you filled out on October 31st?
Yes.
Now, you did know that Mr. Avery had Teresa's direct phone number, right?
No, I did not.
Were you aware that he had done a privately arranged shoot with her on October 10th?
Those were called hustle shots, and I didn't have any information about those, so I wouldn't have known.
Well, since it appears that Mr. Avery had made a private hustle arrangement with Teresa Halbach in the past, you don't know of any reason why he couldn't have also done that on October 31st, do you?
Unless he would have lost her phone number, no, I
Okay.
wouldn't know.
Let's put it this way. If he had wanted to kill Teresa Halbach, he could have simply called her directly instead of calling your office and leaving a red trail, easy trail right to his house, couldn't he?
Yes.
That would have made Mr. Kratz sweat. He would have been really pissed off by her answer because it's amazing how she said in one sentence and evaporated everything that Mr. Kratz just built up about the fact that he lured her with all the paperwork pointing to him, whereas he could have easily lured her off the property using her phone number and to do a hustle shot. So it goes to show how crazy Mr. Kratz is, right?
I just want to add in here, and this is Jack's speculation. This is, I want to be sure I'm clear about that. But I'm not entirely convinced at this point that she actually talked to Teresa and that wasn't a message that she left on her phone. I'm just telling you, because of everything that she said and past history between Teresa and her contact at Auto Trader, which we know was very little, especially by phone. Yeah, there was some, sure. But they had this conversation like they're old friends. I'm sorry, I don't think so. And there are other things too. Again, I'm not entirely convinced that this wasn't Dom Tliska leaving a message on Teresa's cell phone. Can't prove that. It's thought.
But by all measures, what Stephen did was your standard ringing up Auto Trader to get a photographer to take picture of a vehicle for sale and put it in Auto Trader magazine. Correct?
That's right. That's right.
Steve never did anything extraordinary. He gave all the details, the vehicle, etc., etc. He hid nothing, and yet Mr. Kratz is trying to turn it around as though it's some type of murder mystery. It's crazy.
It's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. It may be shit that he does. You know, I'm going to take you on a date, but we're going to the morgue if you don't mind. What?
One thing that I saw that I hadn't noticed before was it appeared to me that that document had an account number on it, which would be, Stephen was an active user of Auto Trader, right? There was a woman named, I think, Kathy Willette, that used to come to the Avery salvage yard prior to Teresa.
That's Williford. Williford.
Well, Williford, Kathy
Williford. Yeah,
Williford, thank you.
she was there one time.
One time, but she was a DCI agent too. But let's put that aside. So it's that document you just showed had an account number. Whose account number was that? I don't know the answer to that question, but was that Teresa's account number, or was that the Avery's? Is that the number that Steven gives to say, okay, oh yeah, this is me? I don't know. Why would there be an account number on that? I don't know.
We could probably check that against what was on the screen, because we have those logs.
About 90% of the shoots that the photographers do come from Auto Trader to the photographer.
Yes.
But there's something else where maybe 10% on average of a photographer's shoots are called hustle shots, right?
Yes.
And those are where leads come not from Auto Trader, but from the photographer, him or herself.
Yes.
And there's an incentive for photographers to do that because they get paid more on hustle shots, don't they?
Yes.
What was the pay for an Auto Trader lead, typically?
Typically $8.75.
$8.75 for one photo, right?
One photo.
Okay. And what about a hustle shot?
$18.75.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that Teresa did have a history of using these hustle shots for some extra income?
Sure. Yes.
And maybe you'll need to take a moment to look at these, but what Teresa told you on these forms is that she did 12 hustles in these 15 days.
Correct.
And your office would not even know about any hustle shots unless and until the photographer sent that information back to you at the end of the day. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And so on October 31st of 2005, if Teresa Halbach had done a hustle shot, you would not have known it in advance, would you?
No.
So bottom line is, from your records, you don't know and cannot tell this jury whether or not Teresa Halbach left Mr. Avery's property on October 31st and went somewhere else to do a hustle shot. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
One follow-up question, Ms. Schuster. The real bottom line is if Ms. Halbach was killed by Mr. Avery, she couldn't have done any hustle shots after that, could she?
Well, that would be correct.
The point of the hustle shot is that the state wants to argue and in fact put out into the media as quickly as November 4th, and maybe even November 3rd, that Stephen Avery was the last person to see her, when they didn't know that, and they don't know that to this day.
Can we expect to maybe see evidence of a hustle shot or another phone call following that, possibly?
I think you can figure it out for yourself. If we're saying that someone else did the hustle shot, or that she got a hustle shot with someone else, do you think that person would come forward with evidence?
There is a guy named Heinrich Berg who's claimed to have seen a stupid photographer on October 31st. Just saying, you should put a link in the description to the
German.
Yes, exactly. We went over the German in one of our extended podcasts. I think Mule, so we were having a good time. It rivaled a reading with the crew live in length. So it was a pretty fun live. You should go back and watch it. But yeah, the evidence. There's no calls. There's no calls on her cell phone that would indicate from unknown. So yeah, that we're not going to see that.
But Big Jeff, you made a very important point there. You said from her cell phone. Well, we all know that Campion and Pam of God found a discarded burner phone in close proximity where others have seen the RAV4 at the turnaround, right, Jack 61. So
that's right.
What you just said actually was quite chilling, Big Jeff, because she could have easily have been leading a double life and using a burner phone to make calls. And Big Jeff, I think you actually did a presentation on the burner phone, and you didn't get too far, right? Because there was a lot of wrong information.
Oh man, it was unbelievable how they messed up even the model number on the battery. They can't seem to get that right. So that was, and what we'll have to do is sort of an extended thing. I mean, how believable is it that Teresa, 25 years old, on Halloween, doesn't get a single phone call from any, when back in those days, um, I guess I was a little bit older. Kel is about the same age as Teresa, it seems, from what she's putting in the text. And in those days, with that level, and when cell phones were sort of just, you get shit faced and call your friends. That's what you did, just to terrorize them for not being there. It's incomprehensible. Her last call of the day is the one that shifted to voicemail. What I forget the time, but it's before 4 o'clock, right? How believable is that? It's just not even believable. So, how were her friends communicating? Was there another phone? Is the burner phone plausible? I think so. It's just the family was quick to say, well, there's no other phone. Wouldn't surprise me if they didn't know.
How many 20 teenagers have phones that their parents don't know about? I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot. And she was also having an affair with a married man. You do things, right, to sort of keep things private. And burner phones were really easy to come by. You could buy them in a drugstore for a song, and fill them up with these prepaid cards. Just type in the prepaid card number, and off you go. I mean, it's really, really cheap. So I just can't see her not getting a single phone call from any of her friends at that time. Why not? When Brad Check says he texted her, and Coburn said they offered to show him, I would love to know what number. Love to know.
Yes. Well, the interesting thing is that Bradley Check, I'm not sure whether it was written in the case or report, basically said Teresa was essentially living a double life, and that.
Yeah, and that audio box phone disappeared. Am I remembering that correctly?
That's correct. You cannot get that anymore. It's mysteriously vanished.
Such bullshit.
Yeah. And the thing, to be able to get the model number that they sort of misprinted on the evidence sheet, if they had just taken a picture, that would, right where the model number was, right below it were the numbers that you needed to be able to get any information that the mobile network provider might have had. The potential owner, right? Kratz dismissed it immediately as a burner phone. But just because you buy it as a burner phone doesn't necessarily mean that you use it as a burner phone, right? Those prepaid cards that you use to charge it, you can maybe you buy those with a credit card. Maybe it's possible to put your own credit. Call them up and on the phone, say, yeah, I'm going to use my credit card to put more minutes on this phone. So just because you can use it as a burner phone doesn't mean that you do use it as a burner phone. People get a little sloppy. All they want is this temporary anonymity of this number because they're going to ditch that phone sometime anyways, and they're not really interested in true clandestine kind of presence. It's more sort of somebody doesn't recognize that number, and that's what's important for right now, and I'm going to get another one. There's a lot of ways to use it that might not completely hide your identity, and none of that was just ever followed up, period. And it's just it's just shameful, and we can't even get our hands on it. You could still do if it were a big mobile network operator like a Verizon, which there's a lot of reason to believe it was Verizon. They'd still have those records. If you knew those numbers, you could find information.
Big Jeff, I could do one better for you. You could MVAC the phone. Use a new piece of kit.
Yeah.
Extract the DNA and see if it belongs to Teresa Halbach, and that would be extremely telling.
I don't know whether it was big over in US, but in 2005, I remember distinctively that text messages was the new norm. Like they were the new normal. Everyone was doing you know, you'd make a phone call if you had to get to a certain point, but it was like the trend, that's probably the perfect word. The trending over here was around the early 2000s when text messages just started to blow up. And even then it wasn't unlimited text. You actually had to still pay. I think it was like 20 cents for each text message, but that was just seriously what was the new generation. People were like using that. People were custom. I think back then people, I don't think the Motorola itself, I did remember having a Motorola, but I can't quite remember you know, the features on it. But as it kind of grew, like people were getting phones that had text messages that were changing their ringtones to songs, and you could download it. And so it was becoming a new trend. And then when you echo with what you were just mentioning in terms of Bradley Checks, who openly discloses that text messages was clearly a form of communication between them, yet no one considered that, you know, text messages might have been a factor in the being that there was no communication for a duration of a few hours, and that things weren't piling in as well in terms of you know, that. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying. The last phone call that was documented on the 31st was at what, 4:35, and it was of Stephen Avery. Don't you, again, another man miracle that the last phone call that they present is Stephen Avery, where the state clearly was trying to give the narrative that he was trying to set up a alternative you know, storyline that she never rocked up that day. That's kind of how it kind of gets presented. That was their, you know, state's motive for why Stephen tried calling back. And you listen to the 9th of the 9/11 interview with Stephen, you see Mark and Tom really kind of walk him around in circles with that one. They seem equally confused, and it kind of gets Stephen in a bit of a, I'm not going to say the word panic, but it gets him into a state of confusion himself, and he can't quite work out the timing, because they start saying, so you called straight after she left, and he's like, yep. And they're like, well, 2 hours after the fact isn't straight after she left, Stephen. But they weren't telling him that there was 3 calls. They were letting him believe that there was like 2. And so it was really confusing for him to kind of work out and establish the timing. But go back in a circle to where we started. Text messages. You don't even need a burner phone for that. You just have your text messages data that could have shown. You might, Big Jeff, you might be able to elaborate more on this. When I refer to text messages, I'm not necessarily saying that they could obtain the text messages themselves. I'm saying in terms of being able to capture how many text messages went out, how many text messages came in that day, and numbers associated to that.
Oh, you're 100% correct on that, Kel, because the data that you're talking about is often referred to as the metadata, and the texts themselves. I mean, the first point you made, even before you asked the question, was absolutely brilliant, right? Because this was an area where you know the number of texts that you could receive. You know, if you went over, you'd have to pay more. When it becomes a question of billing, the phone company is required to, you know, have evidence that you actually, you know, sort of spent your allocation and use more. So they count those things, and it wouldn't be uncommon for you know, texts, you know, the number of texts that you sent to be on your bill, right? And they want you to, you know, sort of, you know, pay more per month to order a number of texts that you're not going to use. So you pay more and them you know, to them per month, you know, on a per monthly basis. So we have actually never seen the full singular bill for Teresa's phone. We've actually, you know, we don't have a. Isn't that incomprehensible that we don't have a copy of that full multi-page bill that would have this types of information about how many texts she sent that month. It's just that metadata. But back to your direct question, is absolutely true, right? So in order to maintain the billing records, they keep data about the data, and that's what metadata is, data about the data. That the text system works is something that often referred to as like a post office protocol, right? In the post office, when you go to the post office and you pick up your mail, the mail's gone and you have it. So it's for in the piece of the cellular infrastructure that managed the text was something called the SMS center, short message service. That's what a text is, a short message service. So the SMSC, the short message service center. By 2005, texting was $1 billion business, like you were saying. It was all over the world. So whole new pieces of the cellular infrastructure evolved to manage it. Big giant servers, and people were concerned about privacy, so they didn't keep the messages themselves, or at least they said that they didn't. But those messages that came in after her phone died would still be stored in the SMS center, right? Because where are they going to go? They're not stored on your phone. You don't, the phone was broken. You'd be unable to retrieve them, and they have to be stored somewhere. The same way as if you go on vacation for a week and you come back and you turn on your phone, you sort of expect to be able to retrieve the text. They're stored somewhere in a centralized location. You grab them and they're gone. But yeah, so the text that came in sort of after her phone went away should have been available, and they should have been available for a good long time, because it actually takes work to delete the account. The FBI was very big into cellular forensics. Even in the early 2000 timeframe, they were hiring people who were experts in cellular telephony to help them understand what information they needed to subpoena from the phone company to be able to get the information they wanted. The phone company was very reluctant. Were very reluctant to do it because they felt that if all of a sudden cellular became sort of this means of extraction for law enforcement, that it would lose traction. Nowadays everybody knows that it's a direct route to everything, and they don't really care. So they, in retrospect, maybe they weren't right about that, but the FBI would have been well aware had they contacted them as to how to get that information, what texts were still there. Who she probably had a zillion texts, especially on the first. After people started to realize that she was gone, people admitted that they texted her. So yeah, the text should have been there. Especially the ones that the metadata about the ones that went out, what time they went out, perhaps even what tower they went out to. Maybe depending upon the sophistication of the texting subsystem at that time. Probably maybe not that sophisticated as to what tower it went out to, but for sure the time. That it was actually retrieved from the SMS center. All that data should have been available to analyze, and it's just the lack of competence of the MTSO and the Wisconsin DCI to pursue that potentially very revealing avenue. But yeah, I'm sorry for the long answer, but it's something that just wrangles the crap out of me. I do know quite a bit about cell phones and in that area, so it's really wrangling to not have that information.
Just a couple things to add to that. Number one, and people that have been around know this, but maybe the newer people don't. Teresa bought extra for text messages. She paid like it's on her bill. It's like I think it was like $10 a month or something for 500 text messages before, like Kel said, you had to pay so much per text, like 10 cents or whatever the hell it was. Number two, and I'm almost positive, and I'm going to look maybe while we're chatting here. There is a front page of Teresa's bill. I don't know which bill it is. However, I'm positive it says number of text, and it says 135 or something of that nature. Of course, it's just a total. But as you alluded to, they have to justify their billing to each person. So they're clearly, they know where these texts, how many texts there are, yada, yada, yada. Number 3, what was my number 3? I forgot my number 3. It'll come back to me. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. She did have extra, she did pay for extra text messages.
That's a great point, because if she's utilizing extra features by paying more, it just for me indicates that that was a method of her contact. You wouldn't pay for a service that you wouldn't be using. And sometimes it's, let's face it, in a business transaction as well, sometimes it's a courtesy. We know that she does sometimes call, but when it's direct contact, we don't know. This is very speculative, what I'm about to say. We don't know whether she uses the text as more for a personal, reason, whether that's just to send text messages to friends versus using it as a method of contacting clients or people that she's going to speak to, and use the text messages to do that for business. But regardless, you're not paying for something you're not using. So it would have been an interesting avenue for them to explore more, knowing this.
I think it's absolutely cool. I'm backing you up there. I do want to have a question for Big Jeff, and it's going to be roundabout a little bit, but I'll get to it. And that is, well, basically the question is, in 2005, from those phones, can you delete a text? Because I just did it on my phone. I deleted the text message that I sent to someone, and I deleted the text message that they sent to me. So if it was a contact and we had a thread going, and I deleted the last message that said meet you at 5 p.m., it will look like I didn't reply to you. Does that make sense? I think so I guess what I'm saying
the concept of a texting thread did not exist in 2005. So you have a phone right now that you can see your ongoing conversation. That's not really what you had. The interface didn't look anything like that in 2005. That's right. Yeah. So because it's like I said, the post office protocol. The content of the message. If the phone companies are to believe, is gone from both of those messages because they've been deleted on both sides. Only the record of the transaction of the message is still around. So yes.
So I guess that gets to my point. Like, okay, so let's just say, for example, another hypothetical here, really quickly, that, I'm not saying that Brad Check has anything to do with it, but let's just say for a second, he deletes a message that says, meet you at 5 p.m. at whatever place, right? And he deletes that. So when Wiegert goes to look at his phone, it just says, hey, how you doing today, right? That's the last thing he sees on the text message, right?
Yeah,
if they had gone to and subpoenaed these records, that would be confirmed, and they didn't. And that's the point, that they could have confirmed if Brad was telling the truth or not. Was this the last text message? And they avoided it like the plague.
Yeah, it would have been easy. I think that would have been very easy. It would not require any advanced forensics to tell whether or not his account sent a text to Teresa. That's an easy lift for forensic analysis, cellular forensics. Absolutely.
For me, though, sorry, for me, I just struggle with the whole phone thing because, okay, we know that, there's no more outgoing calls from her in terms of the 241 incoming call that she sends to voicemail. But I think a really big part of this case is something that gets so ignored, especially by law enforcement, and that is the hustle shots. We see, I think it was now I'm getting really confused. I don't even know how far into this we've been, but we just saw, whether it was this episode or last episode, where we saw Dean discussing the hustle shots and was on the stand with, I think it was Dawn, saying, did you know about how much, which was clearly now I'm going off brain foggy, but anyway, we just see them talking about whether or not she how much she gets paid and what's the difference. So hustle shots is more, beneficial for her financially. So the thing that I get really confused about the whole phone aspect is, why wouldn't they want to see whether she had set up a hustle shot, which is off the records? The only way you probably would be able to discover it is through her phone or some kind of contact, so she knows where she's going or whatever. But hustle shots, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, was hustle shots, do we have a pattern for her in terms of that? Was it more of a spontaneous thing, on the job, on the moment kind of thing, or did she set them up in advance as well, but just off the record in terms of keeping it away from Auto Trader? Do we have any kind of pattern with that?
Well, I gotta believe it's more the latter. I'm only speculating, Cal, so I apologize. But we know that she gave Stephen her number because she made more money when it happened. I don't think Stephen was a texter. He was sort of deprived of the texting hype because of his 18 years in prison, and had only been out for 2. If people are if Teresa's giving her number away to people because she'd rather have the hustle shot than go through Auto Trader, then it sounds like your latter hypothesis makes more sense, right? That that she's sort of seeding her number, right, out in the community, so that people will contact her. It doesn't necessarily make sense that they'd all contact her, the morning of that day. We don't have a single text, and you're right that the hustle shot might have been arranged by a text, if that's what your point is.
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah, that's what I mean.
And it could have been done last week, right? It could have been done 2 weeks ago.
It could have. It could have been done a few weeks, and that's what I mean. But the text message, instead of calling, hey, text message, I'm on my way. See you in 5.
I mean, wouldn't you say that? Oh, well, I'm usually on the road, so I won't answer my phone. But if you text me and I see it, like, it's a little easier, right? Because you don't have to pick up the phone, answer it, hold it, right? Like, even though we know now that texting and driving is just as dangerous, so you shouldn't do that. But at the time, it was new, and I think people thought it was safer, right? So I think it was likely. Shoot me a
and
text.
People prefer
Maybe not to someone. Yeah, not to someone like Steven, because you're like, oh, he doesn't even know how to text. Like, just by, oh, he's got like some old, he doesn't really know. But some people, it would be a preferred, like you said, Jeff. It would be my preferred method if I was her. Shoot me the details of the car. You can text it in there. All the details to the car, the year, the make, the model, all there, so I have it for later, and that's it. Boom.
Yeah, please text me because I don't want to answer the phone, right? I mean, it was common for Teresa to call before she came, but if they're her instructions from, the hustle shot where, please text me when you're on the way, that could have very well been the instructions, right? Which would be a reason for her to deviate from that path.
I was going to say, yes, I agree. I was going to say that I believe it was Angela Schuster who said that Teresa Halbach had done 12 hustle shots in 15 days. And all the talk that you were discussing with Kelly regarding the potential burner phone and contacts, don't you find it rather frustrating that I don't believe an in-depth victimology was done? Because a lot of the questions that we're asking now potentially could have come out back in 2005. We're still asking fundamental questions about what Teresa was doing, and to me, that goes to show how incomplete this investigation is.
Well, Big Jeff, it brings us to that point in the show where we have to wrap up and we have to leave the content for next week and leave people on edge for what we're going to get into. Saw a lot, really getting cooking. Episode 7 is really shaping up to be something special. Really the crux, and as I said in the beginning, the meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts of the narrative. So take it away, please, Big Jeff.
Yeah, it was good to sort of get a partial closure on FL at the beginning of the episode, and hand it over to Barb and Scott to discuss Brendan's case some. Brendan is. It's always infuriating when they talk about Brendan. We know the screw job that's coming, but at least there was a chance for some. At least they were optimistic. I mean, in the moment they didn't know it was going to happen. We know in hindsight what happens is that the 3-judge panel agrees with Judge Duffin and says, yeah, you know what, this confession is not admissible. And back to this, and it's always good to talk about the cell phones, because there's just so much, and you start to think about things that we take for granted every day, that the police know how to do and can extract information from. Very simple. Cellular forensic analysis was not, just like much of the other forensic analysis, just not done at all. And you have to ask yourself why. Is it a myopia, or was it a sort of a deliberate avoidance because they didn't want to know the answer? On to the next.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like, I love that. On to the next. It's our motto here. So on to the next, Jack. Give us your summation.
Yeah, it's agitating. We started off talking kind of a carryover from last episode about the item FL and another. We think we've got resolved, but this whole open-ended thing. I'm not going to get off into that. And then we start talking about text messages and what Cal and especially what Big Jeff was talking about, and surrounding that, why did it? County Mounties aside, Uyghur, maybe some of the others wouldn't have thought to do it, but certainly the state people would have certainly thought about capturing text messages. And again, this is a question for Big Jeff, and I seem to remember some discussions a while back about how long are text messages captured within the system that he talked about. And I can't remember, but it seemed like they were like a minimum of, it was like 24 to 48 hours minimum that these messages would have definitely have been there, maybe even longer. So why couldn't they have done an exigent circumstance and say, look, freeze that. We want that information that's captured. We don't, we want all that. And this audio box phone, this burner, same thing. They could have found out what that number was and found out, more about it. The metadata, the data within the data. Big Jeff outlined it perfectly, and it's really frustrating to not have that. So, yeah, very interesting conversation, and I'm going to pull a Big Jeff, my partner at our law firm, onto the next.
On to the next, Dr. Silkman.
I really enjoyed the summation by Big Jeff and also by Jack 61. It goes to show that we are very fortunate here on the panel that we have experts in different categories. I am very happy to talk about the DNA forensic evidence, and it's great that we have people like Big Jeff, also Kelly, and Jack 61 who've got their own areas of expertise. And it's great and also frustrating when I hear Big Jeff, because he's 100% correct. And it goes back to the basic fundamental problems of not doing a proper victimology. And we know that the use of electronic forensics is so crucial now. Yes, things were very different back in 2005, but I believe that more could have been done. To me, it demonstrates the presence of tunnel vision by the investigators. A proper victimology is crucial, especially in a case like this.
Kel, do us the honor, and you have the responsibility of leading us out of episode 31.
Well, I'm glad I didn't hold my breath, because by now I'd be probably in decomposition. So yeah, definitely getting more ramped up in terms of where the Kathleen is breaking down everything, and we get to kind of go back to, I feel like this, I enjoyed this part because it feels like we went back to the beginning. We're touching base on what was happening back then in the courtroom, which is always interesting to see how it played out, because knowing, especially for Kathleen now, because knowing what didn't play out then gives you the advantage of hindsight 2020 now to know what could be more effective if she gets that opportunity again. The phone stuff, I could listen to Big Jeff talk about it all day. It's very fascinating. It's an area that I'm not very well involved in. I don't really cover it. I've never really, besides being interested in the fact that I think that there could be definitely more to it than what we were presented and see. Yeah. On top of that, I think Dr. Silkman saying that the victimology was poorly done is very accurate. I can't agree any more than that. However, I look at it like one of those, Big Jeff would say a man miracle. It's almost too good, the timing, that something or someone stopped the clock before they could even consider going through it thoroughly. To have everything pointing back at Stephen Avery's, or in a sense, the Avery salvage yard in 43 hours out of a 48-hour window period, it screams volumes in terms of, how this case kind of evolved. And clearly it was in one direction. That's all I've got. Until next time, I hope everyone, in the panel and in chat, have a great week or remaining week or weekend, and I'll see you all next time.
Yes, absolutely, Cal. We'll see you guys all next time. Thanks again for everybody for joining. The best way to support the channel is to like, subscribe, and hit that little ding message bell button you get so you hear all the notifications for the show. So for Big Jeff and Cal, Dr. Silkman, and Jack, this is Jeff Jones saying this has been Discussing a Murderer.